I am Mary Ann Lapham. I have been with SCI 11 years like Paul. We're almost, I guess, the same class. Yeah, be 12 next year. I have been working with Agile and government ideas since about 2009, and we've been building on that for the last 6 years, and we'll talk about that quite a bit today. It was interesting. Capabilities with confidence is something Kevin mentioned, and building it better. What kind of software techniques can we do to build it better? And that's where Agile comes in. A lot of people today seem to think Agile is a way to help us build it better. Years ago, when it first came into being, at least awareness for the government, they were saying, well, Agile's a fad. It's not going to last. It'll go away. And now it's still here. It's becoming more common. A lot of people are trying it out. And yet they have this very large continent of Agile where, how do I fit in? How do I do these kinds of things? Do I have a leader to protect me? The little dragon, the red dragon up there. Who's that leader? How do I get past the siren rocks of silver bullets? Is Agile a silver bullet? We don't know these things. And because we don't know these things, there's limited guidance out there. There's very little research still on adapting and adopting Agile for government. It came out of the commercial world. Those folks are way ahead of us, government people, in making use of it. And it makes a difference for the government. When you look at what they're doing in the commercial world, they have less constraints in many ways. Some of the industries don't, medical and people like that. But the government has a lot more constraints, a lot more rules and regulations we have to follow. So how do we fit this Agile thing into government? Where does it fit? What do we do? So we've been looking at that and trying to figure out how it happens for the last 6 years. And we've been using humor because one of the things we found very early when we looked at it is it's going to require a change in how we do business, a change in our underlying culture. That's really hard. And people get very stubborn, kind of fearful, and they're like, I can't change. Oh my gosh. So if you can see the humor in the situation, it seems to help. So we've been doing humor along the way, and one of the things we have done over the last few years is we have an annual colloquium, and we do a graphic recording of what happens at those meetings. After the first one, we announced the second one, and every email I got back saying, Kurt Hess, who's a SCI employee who does these drawings for us, does it in real time. And then when I announced the second one, everybody called and said, is Kurt going to be there? Can we watch him do it again? And yes, he was there. So I personally think they come to watch Kirk draw and not hear about the Agile stuff. But you'll see a lot of his drawings today. And we try to add the humor because it makes it easier for people to go through this transition. It's not so onerous and it's not so scary. So we'll talk a little bit about these different places in here. We have vague requirements. We have the feeding frenzy of I told you so, sharks up at the top of the thing. They're waiting for it to fail. Iceberg of backlog details. What's a backlog? And then finally you can get to that little island of success over there if you get through all these barriers. And we've been trying to address each of these as we go through our process, and some this year have come into things like scaling. So we're trying to provide the DoD and government with actionable Agile guidance. And we have to keep in mind most of the DoD folks have to fall into the 5002. Fortunately, the newest version of 5002 that came out this January actually helps. It doesn't say Agile, never will say Agile, but if you read it carefully, there's one of the models, there's 6 or so of them, that says incremental and iterative capabilities. And those of us who study Agile read it and go, they're really talking about Agile. They've given us help here. They've given people a model in which you can follow. You can tailor your processes so you can use these new techniques. And they're not really new, but to our environment, they are new in the way we're using them. And so what we're trying to do is take what the commercial world has done for the last several years, since at least 2002, when they coined the term Agile, and transition it so it can be used in our environment, our government environment that looks at things slightly differently, may use the same terms, but they mean something different in our world. And we use that translation process. We crank it in, comes usable stuff for Agile, keeping in mind the hardest thing we're going to have to do is change the culture and how we do it. And that's really tough. We've been using grounded theory, action research, and affinity analysis for those of you who are into the more research side of this. And by that, we go in with an idea, and then we talk to people and figure out, oh, by gathering the data, that's what's really happening, we can adjust where we're headed because we figure out what we thought was working isn't really what's really going on. So we can address operational acquisition challenges. And we've been publishing guidelines using a structured anecdotal data. We've talked to a lot of folks over the last 6 years, and they've given us freely their information. Some of it anonymous because they don't want their names published. But we take what everybody has done, good, bad, indifferent, put it together, synthesize it, and publish the ideas and concepts for people to use along the way so they're not starting from scratch. They can learn from people's past experiences. And we're using some of the more common technology adoption models from Adler and Rogers. The cartoon on the bottom, for instance. Those who want to start, they're, ooh, shiny. How many of you tweet? Nobody? Okay, we have a couple. You'd never catch me tweeting. If you're tweeters, you're over on the left side, the early innovators, the guys that season new technology. I'm going to use it. I'm so excited, I'll use it. And then after some people start to use it, people will say, well, okay, it's okay, I'll adopt it. Because I'm an early adopter. Somebody's proven it, they haven't gotten eaten yet, so I can go do it. Then there's the late majority, the people that said, okay, you early adopters, you're using it, hasn't killed you, you've actually got some checklists now, tell me how to do it, so okay, I'll adopt it now. And then there's the laggards, tweeters, that's me, laggard, I will never probably ever use it. Even if you held a gun to my head, not going to do it. On the other hand, I'm probably an innovator early adopter for using Agile. Quite frankly, some of the techniques I've seen in Agile, I used in the, okay, I'll date myself, 70s and 80s. They've been around. How we combine them, the way we use them is slightly different today because we have better tools, things that weren't available 20, 30 years ago because our technology's advanced that much. And then you have, okay, the one on the right here is, why would I want to use this Agile thing? Well, because we need faster time to capability. Things are changing faster in our world. We need it quicker. So somebody comes in and says, I need it faster. That could be your foreign element. Or it could be the boss says, we're going to go to Agile. Okay. So you change. You have a little bit of chaos because every time you try to learn something new, it takes you a while to get better. And then you're going to adopt it and transformation idea. And I get it. And you start practicing it, and pretty soon it becomes a new status quo. Agile is never going to replace the traditional models in DoD, folks. It's just another option you have in your bag of tricks. And it can be used in many environments, but maybe not in yours. You have to look at it from a realistic standpoint. It is not a silver bullet. Okay, our journey started in 2009 when my boss, John Foreman, came back from a conference and said, there were these people there talking about Agile. Can we use this Agile thing in DoD? I don't know. So off we went, sponsored by the Air Force. Blaise Durante, for those who remember Blaise before he retired. And we looked at 5002, the 2008 version, and said, is there anything in here that says we can't do it? Absolutely, positively cannot do it. We didn't find anything. There were some constraints, some issues, but you could do Agile. You have to change your way of thinking. And one of our conclusions then was culture. That's going to really be hard. And it moved on, and by 2011, we started getting some line funding because we realized it was bigger than just the Air Force. And we've been adding to the body of knowledge as we went along. And in this year, we've been adding more things. We've been looking at things like scaling Agile. What does that mean? Well, how do you measure, is Agile successful? That's still a hard one because there's really nothing out there yet. There's some ideas. A lot of those papers are still in review, so you won't be able to get a hard copy of those today. Sorry. Give me about a month. So it gets through our process. So we have a body of knowledge out there that are there for people to use to make it easier for you to adopt Agile in your environment if you so desire. So we have a series of guidelines. This year we have some in review. Like I said, success measures. How do I know if my Agile conversion is really working well? What do I look at? Scaled Agile. What do I mean by Agile? Does it mean team size, program length, complexity, product size? What am I really scaling here? And what we've done in that particular paper, there are about 5 frameworks for scaling Agile available commercially right now. We've taken a look at all 5, and figured out how they meet or not meet readiness for adoption in our environment. So that'll be published in the next month or so. And it looks at each of the 5 to give you ideas what they are. And then we have the original TN, which we did. We've updated it to reflect the newer version of 5000, which actually does make it a little bit easier in our environment. And we've published this year contracts and Agile guideline for those who are talking to their contracting officers and they go, you can't do this. I need to know everything up front. And Agile doesn't work that way. There are ways around it, and actually the FAR clauses, federal acquisition regulations, do support, depending on how you interpret them. Some other results, we have published podcasts. It's on CMU iTunes, actually. There are 12 principles that go with Agile. There's one for each out there, if you want to listen to Suze Miller and myself yak at each other about what do the concepts mean in our Agile in a government thing. We've also had a couple podcasts highlighting some of our past papers, System Engineering and Metrics. They've all been this year. We've been at different conferences, the Ground System Architecture Workshop out in California, where we did a and what's real and what's not real about. You hear a lot of things about Agile. Some of it's myths, fables, untruths. A lot of these cartoons are from that particular briefing. Software Technology Conference, which is next week in San Diego. I'm moderating a panel of 4 of the major contractors who all have Agile practices within their companies. We're going to talk about what their Agile journey was like. And then the end of the month, we're going to be working with a System Engineering Conference with the NDIA folks. PARCA, the Performance Assessment Root Cause Analysis Group, they actually are doing quite a bit of study right now on how do they use EVM and Agile. They've had a couple of conferences, one about 3 weeks ago. And GAL is also working on a guidebook of how do you use Agile and scheduling and stuff from their perspective, how you analyze it. And then AFEI, which is a subset of the NDIA, they have a group called ADAPT, which is looking at how to adopt Agile in the government. And we've held a joint conference with them the last couple of years. Operational impacts. We've helped some of our customers achieve benefits by using the incremental and iterative development that you can get out of an Agile concept. We've provided basis for others to build on. We found out, every once a month or so, I get an analysis of how many people have downloaded our papers. Over 1,300 downloads of our papers, 64 countries across the world. So somebody asks, is this just here or is it it's international? Every time I see that, I'm kind of like boggled that people in India and in Africa are downloading our papers to find out what works and what doesn't work. In 2012, we founded what we call the Agile Collaboration Group. When we started, people were like, we're not going to talk to you. You're out to kill this Agile movement. We know you are. We published the first paper and said, you can use it. It's not going to be easy. And all of a sudden, people were willing to talk to us. And they kept saying, if you need anything else, call me. So in 2012, we thought, we could use a group to advise us. So we started this Agile Collaboration Group. And now we have over 175 individual members from 51 different organizations across the government, all services, Air Force, Army, Navy, Marines. Most of the government agencies. In fact, Department of Agriculture, a gentleman that Anita met, he joined us a couple years ago. He got invited to one of our colloquium, which is we hold once a month think workshop. We get together in usually our DC office and talk about Agile concepts. And he came to learn. Unfortunately for him, he was a retired contracting officer, and our topic to that briefing was contracts. So we picked his brain. Actually, we picked his brain dry. But we also gave him a lot of information, and we had a good time doing it. And he actually helped us with our contracting paper. Little did he know at the time. We support the C4I, COI, community of interest. It just cuts across all that kind of, anytime people want to use this as a method. Better buying power. Actually working with the ADAPT group out of AFEI, they have written a paper which we have contributed to on how Agile can work in the BBP 3.0 innovation and reduce cycle times. And they're working on updating that right now. So we've had to get the Agile sled moving. People are jumping on the bandwagon. They want to see if they can use it, but they need to know how. The first question is, What's different? What do I have to do differently? How do I do it? What have my colleagues done in different services, different agencies? How do I use that so I don't have to start from scratch? So we've been doing that. So that helps fill in this Agile continent. Hopefully getting to the island of success up in the upper right-hand corner, avoiding the siren of silver bullets down in the left corner. Figuring out that we don't need all the documentation. You should tailor it for your environment. Obviously, if you're building something that's going to go boom in the night, you want a lot more documentation how to make sure it's working well than if you're just building something that's in the back office. Criticality, loss of life is very important. Cooking the traditionalists, that was the little humor they had. You know, the traditionalists, the ones who never ever want to change because, well, that's not the way we've always done it. You have to get past the fact that they're going to have objections. You have to figure out how to make them comfortable and get rid of the risks that they see in the system. And there are risks. It's not going to be easy. We've hopefully answered some of these, if not all, and we're continuing to work on this, and we're willing to talk to people individually and help you with your journey.